What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video where we get to take a look at one of the cheapest ways of getting on two wheels, especially if you want something brand new. Now, it's only a 50cc. It does come in some markets in a 125cc variant. I don't have it available to me. I just have the 50cc. But basically, the 125cc variant is the exact same scooter with a bit of a bigger engine. But yeah, this is one of the cheapest options of getting on two wheels. In my market, it's about 1,700 euros, so 1,700 euros. It depends on your market, the price, but if you look on the web and see something available in your country that looks like this but might be in a different color, either blue or green or this orange or whatever other color, it's the same thing. If it looks like this, it's probably this, even if it's called something else. But yeah, let's take a look at it as we usually do, from front wheel to back wheel, and see what this thing is all about. All right, starting up front, we've got ourselves an interesting looking fairing, fairly modern looking fairing with some fairly modern looking headlights, which are LED headlights. If we turn the scooter on, we see nothing, but if we start the engine, oh, side stand was down. Now we get to see the full array of LED lights with the turn signal indicators, which are both LED, daytime running lights, and high and low beams being LED. It might not come up properly on camera, but believe me, these LEDs are quite bright. Moving on down, we have a 12-inch wheel with a 90 by 90 tire. We have normal front fork. They're pretty small. I think they're like 35 millimeters or something, but they do the job well for this kind of scooter. And up front, we have a dual piston caliper with a 190 millimeter brake disc. Once again, this is a small brake disc, but again, the scooter is extremely light, and it's sufficient stopping power for something of this size. Moving on to the side and rear view, as we can see, we have a completely flat floor here. Unfortunately, there's no fuel tank here. This is where the battery is. The fuel tank is under the seat. We're gonna look under the seat in a little bit. We have a bit of a cubby hole here. Maybe you could store your phone or maybe a little water bottle or something. A half-liter water bottle will fit in here properly. We have our ignition switch with an ignition lock. We have our passenger foot pegs recessed into the bodywork. Nice clean lines. Again, very modern machine. We have a decently comfortable seat. It's not big, it's small, but again, this is a small scooter. And in the back we have a luggage rack. The engine, like I've said, this one is a 50cc air-cooled unit. Normal 50cc affair, about 3 horsepower, 3 newton meters of torque. Limited to 45 kilometers an hour as the law is in the European Union. We have our exhaust here, we have our rear fender. The rear wheel is very well encompassed in plastic, so you shouldn't get dirty on wet, rainy days. And in the back we have a full array, once again, of LED lights. It's amazing at this price, this scooter is completely LED. You see scooters that are twice the price of this that don't have a full array of LED lights, but yet this one does. Under the seat, it's a fairly normal affair. We have our fuel tank right here, which is locked by the seat only. So we have just a little 5-liter fuel tank here, but with fuel economy of about 2 liters per 100 kilometers, this thing should get over 200 kilometers on a single tank. And under seat storage, yeah, it's not that big, it's not that deep. You're not gonna get a full face helmet, and to be honest, I think you're gonna struggle to get a decent jet helmet inside. But this is for carrying, I don't know, a bit of tools, a bit of extra oil in case you need it, a water bottle for your delivery works or whatever, or maybe just a little bit of shopping, like 2-3 days worth of shopping. I don't know, it's a small underseat storage, but again, if you want a really small and light scooter, you're gonna end up with a small storage space. Looking at the controls, we have a kill switch here. We have our normal front and rear brake, our throttle right here, engine start button. We have our key down here. We have, like I said, a cubby hole. We also have a luggage hook here for putting a bag right by your legs. In terms of dashboard, we have our speed indicator and our fuel gauge, and also our idiot lights up here, which basically show just a check engine light, high and low beam, and a high beam indicator and a signal indicator. On the left hand side, we've got our normal indicator switch. It does make a little tick when it indicates, but it's very, very faint. We have our horn, and we have our high and low beam selector. Now, as you would expect, there's not much to talk about on a little machine like this that costs only 1,700 euros. There are very little bells and whistles. It does have fuel injection on the other hand, so that's nice. It does have a full array of LED lights, and I've tried the front headlight in the night, and it really shines bright, surprisingly bright again for the cost of the machine. In terms of seat height, we've got 760 millimeters of seat height, so me at 175 centimeters tall, I can easily flat foot the thing. And in terms of weight, this thing is 85 kilograms, all right? 85 kilograms. So as you can see, it's a proper toy. I mean, if you're in a pickle, oh, this came out. If you're in a pickle, I mean, you can just pick this thing up and just run away with it like it's nothing. Also, like any regular scooter, it comes with a side stand and a center stand. And for all of you worried about redundancy and backup, this thing comes with a Kickstarter. So the key is on and oh, come on. Let's see, I haven't kickstarted a scooter in a long time. Fine compression. 1,700 euros. Starts on the second kick because I am not an experienced kicker. But yeah, it works. Fuel injected, LED lights, Kickstarter, 1,700 euros. So, let's take this thing out for a ride. See how something this cheap rides. Let's go. Alrighty, riding the little Revo 50 or whatever it is called in your market. Like I've said, if you see this thing in your market being sold under a different name, it's the same machine. And like I've said, in some markets you might see it with a 125cc variant. Here we don't have it. But how does this thing ride? Well, first thing you notice, and you really notice it, is how light the thing is. It's stupidly light, and with a 12-inch front wheel and a 10-inch on the back, it's just weird how quickly the thing changes direction. I mean, it might actually catch you out because you might lean into a corner and realize you've leaned way too far and have to pull it back. But again, it's easy to pull it back because it's light. I mean, just rolling around the yard, it's just so bloody flickable. I mean, you can just throw it all ever which way. And I think we've just scratched. It's tremendously easy to flick on from one side to another. It's the experience is hard to fathom. If you're used to normal motorcycles or even normal scooters, this thing is just on a different scale in terms of lightness and agility and maneuverability. It's a lot closer to a bicycle in the way that it changes direction. You do have to be mindful you don't lean it too much in a corner, because it's actually quite easy to really get some lean angle on it, and you are gonna scrape fairings, or you're gonna scrape your side stand or your center stand. But from where I'm riding in a tight little yard, this thing is just a peach. In terms of power, the engine is nice and responsive. It's just a 50cc, so we're not gonna get tremendous amounts of power out of it. But you don't need for a tight little city or for just your local community. This thing is something quite nice to get around and get about. And probably the 125cc version with a little bit more power and a little bit more speed might actually be nice on some short trips, like a couple of kilometers, 30 or 40 kilometers. In terms of suspension, well, this is where the Revo doesn't shine. I mean, the suspension is rough, to say the least. It's hard, it's quite harsh, but it does the job of keeping the wheels on the ground. It's just not as comfortable. But again, for this price point, if it would have had, I don't know, some extreme style of suspension, some really awesome suspension, that's just impossible to do. Suspension costs money, and anyone expecting a cheap little machine to have awesome suspension, they're just crazy. Suspension costs money. There's no two ways about it. You cannot make it cheaper. It costs as much as it costs. It has functioning suspension, but that's about it. It just has functioning suspension. I can't really say that it's tremendously comfortable or anything. It does soak up the bumps, but it does jiggle you around quite a bit. In terms of braking, well, we've got a 190mm brake disc up front with a dual piston caliper. It's a hydraulic brake disc because at this price point I would have allowed for I don't know, a cable operated brake disc or a cable operated caliper, just like on old bicycles, but the rear is a cable operated drum. So yeah, it's a disc brake on the front, a drum on the rear, and hard on the brakes. It stops, okay, it stops. But then again, there's not a lot of weight to stop. I mean, 85 kilograms for the thing, there's not a lot of weight to stop. The brakes are adequate for the price point and for the weight of the machine. Again, this thing is not gonna set your pants on fire, but for 1,700 euros, brand new, in this day and age, a brand new two-wheeled machine for 1,700 euros. This is almost unheard of. You would expect it to be falling apart. You would expect it to be basically modern for 1980s, and yet we have LED lights, we have fuel injection, we have stuff that really matter. Like if you're riding at night, it's nice to see where you're going. Fuel injection, it's nice to just press a button and have the thing start and not have to worry about carburetors and jetting and choke and stuff like that. They spent the little money they had on where it matters. So you end up with a very fuel efficient, very economic to run and economic to buy machine that ticks all the boxes for somebody just looking for a cheap way to get around the city and to get around your neighborhood. I've seen these things sold to couriers going over 25,000 kilometers without any kind of issues, and the parts are dirt cheap, and I mean dirt cheap. You can change the entire transmission for 100 euros or less. This thing is extremely cheap to maintain and keep on the road. Fairings cost like 10 euros. Ready painted fairings, okay? Not just you have to paint them. Ready painted fairings cost like 10-20 euros. This thing is cheap, and they've kept the cheapness in absolutely everything. And yet somehow it feels like a well put together, well-rounded machine. Sure, the plastics rattle a little bit, but again, that's to be expected at this price point. The fact that the plastics comes together real nicely with no big gaps, with no weird stuff, even though you feel they are cheap plastics, but they look nice. So in a way, you don't feel like it's that cheap. It feels like something cheap when you look at your wallet. You know you bought something cheap, and yet again when you ride it, it does feel like something well put together. So yeah, it's a budget oriented machine for the budget conscious rider who just wants something to get around the city as cheaply as humanly possible, and this kind of ticks just about all the boxes for that kind of deal. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching my review of the Daytona Revo 50. I know there were a few of you who have been asking me for over a year to test ride this scooter, and well, now I've did. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care out there, everyone, and ride safe. Bye!